welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 40 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 39 of A Game of Thrones. That's Eddard 10, double figures for Eddard.
That's right. As always, we'll chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what's happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes. They provide some additional information about the characters and other things of interest in this chapter. How are you, sir?
Doing all right. How you doing?
Good. Again, for listeners from the future, we are in COVID lockdown, so we are recording remotely.
Yes. You look at a very sunny spot today compared to usual.
I am exactly where I normally sit, but I've raised the blind, so the sun is coming in and hitting me. That's all. I always sit here. So what's? I'm curious. I feel like you've got a story for me.
You're wondering why I wrote tofu on our notes.
I am. That is exactly what I'm wondering about.
It's because last night Stacey made tofu for dinner, which is the first time I have ever had tofu. Which I know is a staple of your diet, so that's why I thought it was noteworthy.
The mind boggles. That's incredible.
She's trying to do this whole meatless Monday thing. That was the first time that she'd ever done it, so it's the first annual meatless Monday.
We had tofu for dinner last night too, coincidentally, and we had it like in a stir fry type thing.
Yes.
But Carson had me pre-cook the tofu in the air fryer.
Oh, okay. We didn't do that.
Do you have an air fryer?
I don't think so.
Do you have this device?
I don't know.
So it just pumps really hot air on things. So you can fry things without much oil. So basically, cut the tofu into cubes, and then a big teaspoon of oil, and then just roll the cubes around in it. So they've all got just a tiny coating of oil. You put them in this basket, stick it in this thing at 400 degrees, and it just blasts it, and it comes out like 8 minutes later, all crispy on the outside and delicious.
Yeah, okay.
And then that got thrown into the stir fry.
That might go over better than the tofu from last night. I gotta say,
was it a bit soggy and silky?
Well, so here's the thing. I didn't mind the tofu. She did this Asian. The sauce was almost kind of like General Tso type sauce. It was like like that kind of sugary sweet sauce with sticky rice and tofu in it and broccoli. So I thought it was quite good. The tofu, I could have left it or taken it. It was a little bit mushy, but
yeah.
I didn't mind it. Ethan really had trouble pretending not to find it repulsive.
Your son is admirable in trying to pretend he doesn't.
Yes. He's like, no, I like it. I like it. And but yet his plate has still had plenty of tofu on it when dinner was over. So
you unearthed a picture of us from like 2005?
I did. It showed up in I get these things from Google Photos. It's like, hey, remember this day? And that was from around 2005-ish. Yeah, one of our many pickup basketball games.
Yeah. That was the core crew as well. Although Frank's in it, right?
Yes. He was not a member of the core crew, no.
I don't remember Frank playing very often. Yeah, I was going to say, but everybody else was the people I remember playing.
Yeah, Brian was not in it. Maybe Brian was taking a photo.
Yeah.
But otherwise, that was our old crew, our old basketball crew. Simon and I used to play basketball every Monday and Wednesday. We weren't all sweaty yet, so I don't think we had started playing yet.
It was fun times. I remember doing that.
Yeah.
And that was like the first time I'd ever played basketball. I mean, I just had no idea how to play basketball.
You were very unorthodox. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
You were effective at times. You were just very unorthodox.
Well, I'm a headless chicken. I mean, I'm that at every sport, so that's not unusual for me. But so when I was 26, I went to live in Greece. And in Greece, I played a tiny bit of basketball, just like a couple of one-on-ones against this huge guy who I worked with, who he taught me a few things. But that was the only other time I'd played any basketball before we started playing.
Well, it was good times. That ended, about 10 years ago? No, more than 10 years ago. Probably
Is
12.
it really? Wow.
Maybe at least 10 years ago. Anyway.
Yeah, we should get down to business.
I feel like we probably should.
Because although the chapter is not that long, we have actually managed to create a plethora of notes.
Yes. Yes, we do. We are already
All
6 minutes in, so I guess we probably should get down.
All right, let's get down to business with a quick recap of what Ned was doing last time we saw him. Last time we saw Ned, he and Peter Littlefinger Baelish and some of Ned's household guard visited a brothel, not for the reasons you're thinking, but to meet the newest base-born Baratheon in the realm, a girl named Barra. Robert's last name is Baratheon.
Aha. Coincidence?
On the ride back to the Tower of the Hand, he ruminates. The Tower of the Hand, where he's getting ready to move out of, having quit as Hand.
Yes.
He ruminates over promises he made to Lyanna and why former Hand John Arryn was so interested in King Robert's bastards. His party is surrounded by and attacked by Lannisters. Jamie Lannister telling Ned he wants his brother Tyrion back. Ned's men are killed and he, Ned, suffers a badly broken leg. Why don't we give them the summary?
Okay. Ned dreams that he and 6 friends face off against 3 members of the Royal Kingsguard, guarding Lyanna in the Tower of Joy. We learn that much of this dream is as it was in real life. Ned tells the members of the Kingsguard that he was surprised that they weren't involved in various recent battles and events. The men respond that if they had been, much would have been different for his and Robert's rebellion.
As the fight begins, Ned can hear his sister Lyanna calling him from the tower. When the dust clears, only Ned and Howland Reed survive, again, as in real life. Lyanna's voice transitions to that of his stewards, Vay and Poole, back in King's Landing. Ned wakes to find himself in his bed with his leg in a cast. He's been unconscious for a week. His new captain of guard, Alyn, tells him his daughters are safe and that Sansa prayed quietly over him, but Arya has been in a silent rage. He's also told that the king and queen are there to see him.
Ned tells Robert that Cat took Tyrion on his command. The king commands that Cat release Tyrion immediately. After Cersei weaves a lie that it was Ned and his men, drunk and coming from a brothel, who attacked Jamie and the Lannister men, Ned tells Robert he was visiting the brothel to see Robert's new daughter. Robert doesn't deny it, but says that the matter is not fit for Queen's ears.
Cersei tells Robert that no Targaryen would allow someone to talk to them the way Robert lets Ned talk to him. Robert gets angry. Cersei doubles down, calling Robert a joke of a king, and that he should be the one in a skirt and her in mail. Robert hits her across the face so hard she stumbles and falls. He then has her sent from the room. Ned wants to speak to Robert, but Robert, now remorseful for hitting his wife, tells Ned he's leaving on a boar hunt tomorrow and they'll talk when he returns. He tosses the hand of the king pin to Ned and commands that he stay and serve him.
So they're getting the band back together.
that whole quitting was never going to last, really.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so starting back over, Ned's dream again takes us to this fateful promise he made to Lyanna. There was,
Yep.
I think at some point he hears her voice saying, "Promise me," or is it the other way around? Is it him saying, "I promise" to her?
I think he's saying, I promise to her.
So
yeah.
in the dream, he says that again.
Yeah. So we get this imagery of Lyanna in her bed of blood. We don't know how she died, but it seems likely that she didn't die of a fever or something of that nature. Type of...
or a broken heart, unless broken completely out of her. So yeah, the mystery remains as to how she died, but obviously it's definitely portentous. So Ned and 6 friends arrive at the Tower of Joy, where Lyanna's held. It's in the north of Dorne. It's a lone tower.
Yeah. I tried to do some background info on the Tower of Joy, but there is shockingly small amount of information. If you look it up, you basically get information on this fight.
Yeah. I think, wasn't it already kind of derelict at this time? I don't think it was like a maintained thing. I think that's why they chose it, because I think it was just
It seems to just be a lone tower in the northern Dornish desert, as best I could tell. So he's vowed not to... So he's got these 6 friends that are with him, and he's vowed not to forget their faces, but as the description goes, the memory has been leached over the years, and they're now just shadows, gray wraiths on horses made of mist, which I thought was pretty cool imagery.
Yeah. And then they in turn meet the 3 members of the Kingsguard, including the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, at the tower. 7 against 3 ought to be an unfair fight, but these guys are pretty good at, pretty handy with the old swords.
Yeah, what might sound like the numbers are stacked in Ned and his friend's favor, but I think it might be more of an even fight than than you'd think. But these faces, of course, are burned clear in his mind, despite all the years, where his friends, he can no longer exactly picture them in his dreams. But these three, very well remembered.
Yeah.
We've got three. Real quick, we'll go through them. Sir Gerald Hightower is, at the time, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. I did try to do some...
For a few more minutes.
Right. I tried to pull together some background info on him, but there's not a whole lot, so I figured I'd just mention it here. His nickname was the White Bull, and he was the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard between Sir Duncan the Tall from the Dunk and Egg series and Barristan Selmy, who we know as the current Lord Commander Barristan Selmy.
Interesting. So he connects the timelines for us. He connects two important timelines.
Yeah. Like Selmy, he was a fierce fighter into later life, although not much later into this life will he be a fierce fighter. He put the white cloaks on Barristan Selmy and on Jamie Lannister both. So he served for 24 years as Lord Commander.
So he's batting 500.
Right, one goodie, one bad. He was commander from 259 to 283. And then we've got Sir Oswald Went, which I did pull together enough information, so we'll talk about him more in the background info. And then you want to give them a reminder on who Sir Arthur Dent is. Arthur Dent from the
Hitchhiker's Guide, yes. Don't panic, I've got this.
He's got knighthood. What is his real name?
So Arthur Dane, as you'll remember, was the Sword of the Morning. He was brother to Ashara Dane, who McKelly likes for mother of Jon Snow.
She's definitely a leading contender.
And actually, this whole incident kind of gives credence to her being the mother, because after this fight, Ned takes Arthur's greatsword. It's called Dawn. Again, if you think back to one of the earlier episodes, I think the episode where Catelyn burns the note, that episode.
Yes, I think
we talked about Ashara Dane, and we talked about the great sword Dawn. He takes the sword back to Starfall. He gives it to Ashara. Ashara's the woman that Cat had heard rumours was Jon Snow's mother. We gave her the first impression rose in Bachelorette Westeros, if you remember. That's just for Bachelorette watchers. So
yeah, I didn't know what that meant when I saw it in the notes, but I figured it had something to do with. And
Ned came home from Starfall with a baby. So somewhere in the near future, he's going to acquire Jon and bring him home.
Right.
Presumably in the future. I mean, unless he was fighting Sir Arthur Dane with a baby Bjorn strapped to his front, which might have helped.
That's why it was such an even fight. It didn't have anything to do with these three members of the Kingsguard. It's because Ned was fighting with a baby on his chest.
So all of that led to the speculation that it was Ashara, or Ashara had a wet nurse called Willa, and Willa might be the mother herself rather than Ashara.
Yeah, and we know this because
that was the name that Ned told Robert was the mother, but in passing, and we didn't really believe him. So
right,
but it could be.
Could be. We don't know.
So after Ned left, Ashara threw herself into the Summer Sea to her death. Why? Had he just taken her only child? Was the news of her brother's death so unlivable for her? Nobody knows.
Right. We don't know what happened there. We do know that at the infamous tournament at Harrenhal, Ned and Ashara they kind of hit it off a little bit, or at least Ned liked her a lot, and Brandon.
But that was all before he married Kat, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So back to the present. When I say the present, of course, I mean the dream. So
yes,
which was also back in the past as well. So the posturing and the trash talk before the fight is really cool.
It is. It's good stuff.
Yeah. So Ned says, "I looked for you on the Trident."
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. And Gerald Hightower responds, "We were not there." And then Oswell Went follows up with, "Woe the usurper if we had been." And a real quick pause here, maybe not real quick, I don't tend to talk real quick, but this feels like a major tactical mistake by the Targaryens, especially Rhaegar, to have these three guarding Lyanna when they're so important. And he had three of them just guarding this tower in the Dornish desert. They could have possibly changed the tide of the war in one way or another. I mean, they fought 7 guys right here to nearly a stalemate.
Yeah. That is a fine point you make, sir. Especially because presumably, and I don't know this for a fact, but presumably her whereabouts was a secret.
Right. As far as I know, yes.
So earlier in the rebellion, there was no need to guard her at all, really. I mean, you just need a handful of men to just be there to stop her escaping. Is the only thing you'd need, because no one would know she was there. The more white-coated kingsguard you put in front of that tower, the more suspicious it becomes.
Right, exactly. What are you guarding with all of those members of the kingsguard there?
So it does seem a very strange decision. Now, maybe before the battle on the Trident, Rhaegar saw the tide was turning and thought, well, I need to send... But all 3 of them? Yeah, it seems crazy.
Right.
Send Oswald Went.
Maybe one personal protector.
Yeah.
One... If they were protecting her from escaping, as well as protecting her from being rescued, you'd think one member of the Kingsguard and some men might do the trick.
Right, and not that many. It's a tower. If you're up the tower, it's hard to get up the tower. You poke downwards, You can defend against a lot of men, Anyway. So, back to the trash talk. Ned says, "When King's Landing fell, Sir Jamie slew your king with a golden sword, and I wondered where you were."
And Sir Gerald Hightower responds with, "Far away, or Aerys would yet sit the Iron Throne, and our false brother would burn in 7 hells."
Man, they are dudes, these 3. I do like.
Yeah.
So
I like
Ned
that
keeps
part, except for the whole Aerys continuing to sit the Iron Throne.
Yeah, well, hey, they're Kingsguard. That was their job.
That's right.
Ned comes back with, "I lifted the siege on Storm's End. Lord Tyrell and Redwine dipped banners. Knights bent knee, pledged fealty. Certain you'd be among them."
Sir Arthur Dane responds with, "Our knees do not bend easily," which is a very Dornish thing to say, as the Martell's words are unbent, unbound, unbroken.
Oh, that's right. Good call. Good call. Do you know what the Danes' words are?
I looked. They didn't seem. To
No,
have
they're unknown. That's right. Yeah. So then Ned says, "Willem Darry fled Dragonstone with the Queen and Prince Viserys. I thought you might sail with them."
Sir Oswald Went says, "Sir Willem is a good man and true," and Sir Gerald Hightower says, "But not of the Kingsguard. The Kingsguard do not flee." And then Sir Arthur Dane says, "Then or now." And then Gerald Hightower says, "We took a vow." And there's a few things that I find comment worthy in this particular
You are going
dialogue.
to stifle those comments because I want to talk about it later.
Yes. I just want to say, though, all I will say is he says that they're not with Sir Willem Darry, but isn't that kind of their job? That's the royal family now. Shouldn't they be with them?
Whereas Lyanna isn't. She's just a prisoner.
Right.
Yes.
Right. It's
yes.
He should be like, "Oh, shoot, thanks for that tip. We need to get going."
Yeah. So every time the king leaves the castle, they're like, "You're on your own, man. We don't flee."
And then the other thing was the "we took the vow" was a little bit vague whether he meant we took a vow as kingsguard, we took a vow to Rhaegar to protect Lyanna. Obviously, they took the vow of the kingsguard, so maybe they mean both.
Yeah, it feels like they're talking about the kingsguard, but then, as you say,
I agree.
It doesn't really apply anymore. It doesn't. I mean,
Right?
Because this is not the royal family. This is Lyanna. Yep.
Yes. So that's what I mean. Did they mean we took a vow to Rhaegar that we would protect Lyanna, and that's why we haven't fled with the remaining royal family, which is really all our job is left to do?
Well, that does make sense, actually. That does make sense. So maybe that is what's going on. Because that does explain what is otherwise a little bit inexplicable.
You mean that they took a vow to Rhaegar?
They took a vow to Rhaegar to stay there, yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
And to defend it with their lives. Because again,
right. Yeah.
Without that, I don't know why they fight here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So as the fight begins, Ned hears Lyanna calling him as a storm of blue rose petals blow across the blood-streaked sky, as blue as the eyes of death. Now, I think this imagery might be doing double duty here. On one hand, if you recall, basically the whole Robert's Rebellion began when Rhaegar gave Lyanna roses after he won the jousting at the infamous tournament at Harrenhal.
1 second, I wonder if our listeners think that the tournament at Harrenhal was called the infamous tournament at Harrenhal. Because that's how we always refer to it.
Right. It is infamous only to us. Well, probably to a lot of people, actually.
Yeah.
Those roses were blue winter roses. So that could be why blue rose petals are blowing across the sky here.
Well, there you go. Very good.
Well, thank you. But they're also blue as the eyes of death. And if we remember way back to the prologue, when Will was up in a tree, he got a look at the others, and he said they had blue eyes, bluer than any human's eyes. So maybe that's where the eyes of death come in here.
Scary.
I don't know. Just conjecturing.
Yeah. So we mentioned earlier that Ned and Howland Reed are the only two survivors at this fight, but we don't actually get the fight here because he wakes up at this point, right? He mentions that in passing, that only he and Howland Reed came back from this, yeah.
Yes.
So everybody else was killed. Okay. So he wakes up in the Tower of the Hand, Vayan Poole tending to him. He's been out for 6 days and 7 nights, and the king is without and wishes to speak to him as soon as he wakes.
Yes.
So Ned says he's too weak, he'll do it tomorrow, and he starts to ask for Jory, but then remembers, so he asks for the captain of his guard, who's now Alan.
Yeah. You might not have been paying attention to Alan.
Guilty as charged.
Here's a little info on him. He came from Winterfell, like the rest of the guard, obviously. He participated in the tourney that Sansa was at, the one in... the
not infamous tourney.
Yes, exactly.
Of the Hand.
This one is infamous because it was making the person that it was honoring so annoyed. He lost to Balon Swan. They don't exactly say when, but he lost to Balon Swan in that tournament. And when Ned sent the 20 men to help the Gold Cloaks to beef up the security, they were sent under Alan's command. And Alan was named at the table when Arya was complaining about how she doesn't like any of the members of the...
including Alan. She doesn't like him.
Well, yeah, remember she was at the table and she was like, I'm mad at all these people. I used to love them all, and now none of them protected Lady, and none of them protected Micah. She mentions Alan.
So by implication, then, the 20 men have been called back from the Gold Cloaks to defend the Hand.
It seems like it, yeah.
Right. So what we learned since last we were here is that Jamie has fled King's Landing, which again seems like, remember the vows that Sir Gerald Hightower was just talking about? I mean, obviously this is not Jamie's biggest breaking of the vows, but it does seem like one again.
Right, when comparing the other breaking of the vow, this is nothing.
What? You've killed the king? Wearing a red cloak instead of a white cloak? Neither here nor there. Cat taking Tyrion hostage is the talk of King's Landing. Everybody knows about it now. Sansa's been praying. Arya's been silent and angry. pretty much as usual for Arya.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I think this is the second time that she's been referred to as silent and angry.
Right.
Yeah. And Ned, he's concerned that this is only the beginning of the strife between the between the Lannisters and the Starks.
Yeah, well, it seems to be on an upward trajectory, that's for sure.
It sure does, yeah.
Although, again, actually, to be honest, still almost the biggest thing that happened was the very first thing that happened. It's just nobody knows that was the Lannisters.
Right. It started off with quite the boom. Yeah, I worry a little bit about Arya trying to exact some retribution on her own. That could really be problematic.
Hopefully her dancing lessons are teaching her that she's not quite ready to take on your Jamie Lannisters yet.
Hopefully, yes.
I mean, obviously, once you get trained to sword fight, you want a sword fight, but job
Maybe
one
I'll
is...
start with a member of the Royal Kingsguard. Even if it is one that keeps breaking his vows every other day. So the bodies of Jory and the rest of the men, rest of the Stark men that were killed are with the Silent Sisters, and they're to be sent back to Winterfell. And Alan mentions that Jory would want to be buried with his grandfather, and Ned thinks, well, it'll have to be his grandfather because Jory's father was one of the members of the six that were with Ned in that fight from the Dream, and he is buried in Dorne.
Right.
Because after that fight, Ned tears down the Tower of Joy and uses the stones to build cairns for the 7 dead, I think.
There's 8 dead. 5 of his friends and 3 Kingsguard.
For the 8 dead, right? Yeah.
Although, doesn't Lyanna die too? Oh, but he did take Lyanna back. He buried the 8, but he took Lyanna home. Yeah.
Right. But he thinks it's a bad omen that he should dream this dream right now. And I thought, well, he did just have quite the tussle with Jamie Lannister, who's a member of the Royal Kingsguard. So,
Thinking back to a previous tussle with the Kingsguard, yes, good point.
Right. Yeah.
Seems reasonable. So the King and Queen call. Ned's surprised and he finds it ominous that the Queen has come.
Right.
And she's had a whole week to spin her webs.
Exactly.
I have to hand that to McKelly. That's his wording in the notes, but it's very true. Because, of course, while Ned's just been lying there feverish in bed, she's been trying to, she's been parlaying what's gone on into a Lannister version of the story.
Exactly.
I've got to say, you've got to come up with something better than Ned came out of a brothel drunk.
She had all week. That's the
exactly
best she came up with. Oh man, I thought better of her with her web weaving.
I mean, sure. What about Ned went to the brothel to find out about your Robert's bastard child, but his men got really drunk and came out and started a fight with the Lannisters. Right. That's okay. That's reasonable.
See, now you're getting the nuances down.
Right,
getting the personalities.
I am not a scheming manipulator like Cersei, and I came up with that on the fly. Where's she? Her web weaving is useless. Job,
clearly. Yeah. But she starts right in with an attack. Ned mentions that his head is still swimming from the milk of the poppy, and she says a man in your place should feel lucky to have your head on your shoulders.
Robert tells her to be quiet. He shows concern for Ned. His anger from last time they talked was completely gone, as we predicted it would.
Yes.
One thing about Robert, he blows hot and cold.
I was thinking about whether I thought that based on the way the story was progressing, or whether I thought that because I already knew that. So sometimes when I'm giving impressions and ideas, I run, like how much do we give away? How much do we not give away? So sometimes I try to lead people along, like give them little tidbits, and other times I try not to at all.
He brought Ned to King's Landing because he knew he needed someone with a head on his shoulders to curb his worst excesses. Ned tried to do that. He failed. He's going to forgive him for trying to do what he wants him to do.
Right. Yeah.
I think we're good.
Exactly.
Apologies for the spoiler if you disagree. So Robert asks Ned if he knew about Cat and Tyrion. Ned, taking it on the chin, says that he ordered it and Cat was only following his orders.
Yep, same thing he told Jamie.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that, and I wonder if he would have given the same answer if it had just been Robert. If Cersei wasn't with him,
been in the room,
would he have said, the truth? Or if he would have still continued to fall on his sword like this?
I don't know.
And Cersei follows up with, "What right do you have to lay hands on my blood?" And Ned gives, in my opinion, a rather odd answer. He says, "I'm hand of the king. I'm charged by your lord husband to keep the king's peace." And I thought, well, everyone in that room knows that's not true.
Well, but I guess what he means is at the time the order was given.
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. Yeah, that could be.
But you're right. I mean, it is odd. Perhaps he's forgotten. He's weak in bed. Wait, am I hand of the king? This is definitely the Tower of the Hand. So Robert's angry about the fighting in the streets. Again, he's had a week of Cersei complaining to him. And that there are 8 men dead, which technically means that more Lannisters were killed than Starks.
And that took me back, and I really meant to look this up, but I ran out of time. Do you remember when Arya, in the last Arya chapter, she was going back to her chambers after she botched telling Ned about what she heard in the dungeons?
Yes.
And she said to, it might have been Jory or Alan, I can't remember. She said, is father well protected? And she was concerned that they only had like 50 Stark household guard compared to however many hundred the Lannisters had. And whoever it was said, don't worry, every Northman is worth 2 or some number of Lannister men. And I meant to look that up to see if it matched what happened here. But
if it's 2, it's pretty close.
Right, yeah.
If it's 1.75, nailed. But seems unlikely that that's what he said. So Robert, as well as being angry about the dead in the street, he's angry about abductions on the King's Road. And
yeah. His wording, abductions on the King's Road and drunken slaughter in the streets, those can't be his words.
He's being fed lines.
He knows that Ned wasn't drunken, and that'll actually come up in a second here. But, we wondered how he was going to react to this whole fight in the street. And I think at the time was surmising that Robert was going to be displeased about Jamie's handling of her. But I forgot to factor in his laziness paired with the Lannisters' ability to rewrite situations.
But again, I mean, just like before, the Lannisters' rewriting of this situation just doesn't bear scrutiny, really. Because if their rewriting is that Ned was roistering and rolling in the street, that just is not Ned.
Right. Yes. So Robert wants Ned to command the release of Tyrion and make peace with Jamie. And that's actually probably a better result than Tyrion had originally hoped for when he was sitting in the dungeon by himself.
Yeah.
He was just hoping to be judged by the king and figured he'd be found innocent.
Yeah. It's taking out that possibility of something going wrong on that. Yeah.
Although, that being said, the trial by combat is probably going on like right
roughly now.
Yes. I don't think a Raven can get there that fast, unfortunately.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
But Ned asks how he's supposed to forget the three of his men who were butchered in the street, and they literally were butchered in the street. I mean, that was what Jamie ordered. There was no. They died in a fight. Jamie ordered them killed.
Yep. But of course, that's not how Cersei sees it. She says, "My brother is not the cause of this quarrel. You, returning drunk from a brothel, attacked Jamie and his guards, just like your wife attacked Tyrion on the King's Road." And Ned is like, his response is, "You know me better than that, Robert." And I think everybody knows.
We all do. Yeah. And I think you said this again. The just like in Darry, when with the situation with Lady, Cersei paints her family as the victims and Starks as the instigators, which
Yep.
We know isn't the case, but...
Yeah, and again, just like in Derry, we know that Robert knows better, even though he doesn't say that he knows better here.
But here he's in a more difficult situation. In Derry, he could have stood up to Cersei and said, I'm not killing an innocent wolf just because our son bullied someone.
Right.
Here, he has to keep the peace between the Lannisters and the Starks. And he cannot give Ned what he wants. Ned cannot clap Jamie in irons just because Jamie picked a fight with him. He just can't.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, this is obviously... There's a lot bigger stakes here than just the life of a sweet little direwolf.
Yeah. So Robert says that Littlefinger admitted that they were coming back from some brothel.
Yeah, I felt like Littlefinger... This doesn't help Littlefinger's cause, in my my conspiracy against
You're still not Team Littlefinger then.
Right. Because he could have provided a much more accurate picture. He could have said, we were riding back, and he didn't say Cersei and I talked to Littlefinger. He said, I talked to Littlefinger. He admitted you were coming back from some brothel. He could have said, we were coming back from a brothel when the Lannister men surrounded us, and I left to go get the gold cloaks. He doesn't have to say that the fight broke out, but he knows for a fact that there were 3 Stark men and Ned innocently making their way back from a brothel, and the Lannisters started it.
Yes. But I think 2 things. One, I think George Martin needs this to be sufficiently ambiguous that he can give King Robert the excuse to not take sides. And secondly, it's good to keep Littlefinger as this Machiavellian figure of mischief and troublemaking wherever he goes.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So Ned chokes on the term "some brothel."
Yeah.
You imagine if he was taking a sip of that wine, he did a spit take, right?
But here you see, I think Ned is incredibly bold because remember, he's talking to King Robert and Queen Cersei. She is in the room. There's just the 3 of them, and he said, "We went there to see your daughter. The mother named the daughter Barra. Looks like the girl you also fathered in the Vale."
Right. And, my thought, aside from what you just said there, which was also a thought I had, but I also thought he told Barra's mother that Barra would want for nothing. And now he just told Cersei Lannister that she exists and that she's in a brothel. That girl might not get old enough to ever get a chance to want for anything. If you recall what happened to the twins in the twins in Casterly Rock,
or at least by rumor, what happened to the twins in Casterly Rock. Right? Yes.
And he even said of Cersei he could believe that. So
then doing this,
yeah. He's really putting it out there.
Yeah. Barra will want for nothing if being terrorised and victimised by the Queen is one of the things she wants. So Robert flushes at this, as you would, and Queen goes deathly pale. Robert says he thought the girl had more sense than to honour him with the name. And Ned points out she's a 15-year-old prostitute. What made you think she'd have sense?
Exactly. Something that struck me, it took me a few readings of this chapter about this, is Robert seems to know exactly who Ned's talking about. So either this doesn't happen very often, Robert doesn't often go out to brothels, or he's already been made aware that he impregnated this particular brothel. Not the brothel.
Bravo, Sir Robert, King Robert.
That he impregnated this particular prostitute.
Possibly by John Arryn, of course.
Right.
We know that John Arryn was aware of this particular child.
So Robert follows this up with, "This subject is not fit for the Queen's ears." I couldn't get that out without laughing. "This subject is not fit for the Queen's ears," as if that needs to be said out loud.
Apparently Ned didn't realise it.
Oh, man.
So Robert does insist that Ned lets the fight go, and again, he's really stymied here. He has to insist on this. Ned laughs at his notion of justice and says, "I'm glad that I'm no longer the hand of the king." And this is where Cersei gets angry about the way Ned is talking to them. That they're the king and queen, and they deserve better respect than this.
What Robert is allowing. And she says, if anyone talked to a Targaryen how he spoke to you, and she never even gets to finish her sentence, and Robert says, "Are you comparing me to Aerys?" And I thought, wow, even for Cersei, this is a really bad timing and a really bad idea to compare him to Aerys Targaryen, or any Targaryen for that matter.
Yeah. I don't think there's ever a good time to mention the Targaryens to Robert.
There's not. This might be a particularly bad one, but there's probably never a good one. So then a royal fight breaks out. And Cersei says, the Starks have driven off one brother and seized another. And I give her one of the two there. She's right with the seizing of Tyrion.
Well, I know she's got a point. I mean, Jamie's been driven off by what he did to Ned. Right. Not by Ned, but...
See what you made Jamie do to you?
Yeah. And then... I think again Robert tells her to be quiet, and then she says that the gods have made a joke of them, that he should wear the skirts while she should wear the mail, which this ends how you might expect. Robert hits her across the face, she stumbles and falls. She doesn't cry out and says she's going to wear the bruise like a badge of honor.
Yeah, I don't think this is the first physical abuse that we've seen. We don't know how prevalent it is, but I don't think she's going to forget this one anytime soon. And I wondered when it happened, if Ned saw Lyanna's swollen face when Robert backhanded Cersei like that.
What, he imagined it happening to Lyanna, you mean?
Yeah, that was Lyanna's who Robert was originally betrothed.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got to imagine Robert and Lyanna would be a happier couple than Robert and Cersei.
You would certainly think so, but this has got to be deep-seated down in him somewhere, but this kind of physical abuse of his wife. But at some point, Lyanna and Robert are going to have fights, and
But I don't know. I mean, just think of his life. He's in love with a girl. He goes to war and fights a war to get the girl back, and he gets everything he wants apart from the girl. She dies, and he then has to marry someone he doesn't like. They have a 16-year loveless marriage. He's utterly frustrated with his life. He likes nothing about it.
Yeah, and he's drunk in fact, he's drunk in this scene here. When he comes in, Ned thinks, the description says that he's already flush from drink.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean,
anyway,
look,
I'm
there's no excuse.
not making excuses for him.
Yeah, neither am I. To be clear, I just think that although it's deep seated, I think the seed was planted after Lyanna's death. Now, it may have found fertile soil, and so that seed may have grown even if he'd married Lyanna and lived a contented life. But I think the source of this is Lyanna's death, and so Lyanna may never have faced this side of Robert.
That's possible. So Robert sends Cersei out of the room, and then he and Ned sit and talk, and Ned thinks that Robert he's no longer angry, he just seems sad and a bit scared, and Robert says, I shouldn't have hit her, that wasn't kingly. Which most of the things he does isn't very kingly, but...
Well, I don't know. I mean, through history, lots of kings have been drunken
That's true. That's true.
He's not way off base.
I guess it depends on what he means by the term kingly.
Yeah. And then to his frustration, he talks about wonders how you're supposed to fight someone you're not supposed to hit, because that's how he knows how to fight.
This made me think that he would have made a great general, just not so much a king. He's just not fit for ruling with influence and policy. He's fit for ruling with his fists and his warhammer and his bravery and bravado.
Yeah.
He can win those battles. He can win battles using strength and violence, but you can't do that in disputes in your marriage. So
yeah. Which, like you said, that could have spelled bad news for a marriage with Lyanna too, but I don't know.
Yeah. So he says Rhaegar won, despite the fact that Robert killed him, and he won the glory for doing so, but in the end it was Rhaegar that got Lyanna, and as Robert puts it, Robert got her, referring to Cersei.
So Rhaegar got Lyanna in the sense that they both went to death at the same time, basically.
Yes, that's how
yeah.
I assume he means it.
So Ned wants to talk to Robert. He wants to clear up all of these issues, and there are many. But he wants to explain what he's been doing following in Jon Arryn's footsteps. And
that's what I was wondering. Do you think that's what
I
he's
think so.
Wanting to talk to him about?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot. I mean, I think he wants to make a stronger case for why Tyrion and Jamie need to face the music. I think he wants to perhaps put more conditions on coming back as Hand of the King, or he wants to say goodbye because he wants to get out of there,
Yeah.
But I do think he's interested in talking to him about what, because I mean, he's brought up the brothel, he's brought up Barra.
Yes. That's what I thought he meant.
Yeah.
I thought he meant he wanted to talk to Robert about all of the breadcrumbs he's been following of Jon Arryn's. See if Robert can shed any light on the situation.
Exactly, because Robert might be the one to say, oh, I see it now. Yeah. I know what Jon was talking about.
Right. But that's not going to happen right now because Robert's leaving for a hunt in the Kingswood tomorrow, and they'll talk when he gets back because, as he put it, he's sick unto death of talking.
Yeah.
I hear that a lot around my house, so I can relate.
Do they say it like that? I'm sick unto death. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So Ned wants to leave for Winterfell, but Robert's like, tosses him the Hand of the King class and says, like it or not, you're my Hand of the King. I forbid you to leave.
And Ned feels like he's been given no choice, and so he asks what seems like a very relevant question. Why would you want me as Hand of the King if you refuse to listen to my counsel? And I think Robert provides the answer we all expect him to provide. Someone needs to rule the kingdom.
Yeah. But actually, one thing about that, from Ned's perspective, he's got to remember that he is only the Hand of the King. I mean, your job is to provide counsel. It doesn't necessarily mean the king should always listen to it. You are... Yes. The king is entitled to his own opinion.
Maybe that stems from the fact that Ned is Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, and so he's used to being the definitive answer.
Yeah.
Here, he's only in an advisory capacity.
Yeah. So someone has to rule the kingdom is a good answer. I think his better answer, or at least his better way of getting Ned to stay is what he says next, because he says, the next time you throw this in my face, the pin of the Hand of the King, I'll pin it on Jamie Lannister, and that will get Ned to stay and be Hand of the King.
Right. That'll cling to him. He'll be his constant shadow if he thinks Jamie Lannister is next in line. Which I would think anyone who's thinking it through has to think Cersei is lobbying hard for Jamie to get that position. In fact, that's what Cersei was telling Jamie right before he pushed Bran out the window.
Ran out the window, yes, I remember. Weirdly. All right, to background. So let's just go through Ned's friends that he fought with at the Tower of Joy.
Yeah.
Which is beautifully misnamed. I love that. So we talked a little bit about Martin Castle, Jory's father. He was known to be very proud.
Yeah.
That's all we mentioned we got on him.
Howland Reed, wasn't much. Really wasn't much on him.
Howland Reed... we did talk about Howland Reed just briefly back in the first Ned chapter. He's Lord of Greywater Watch, which is built on a crannog, so he's known as a crannog man. A crannog is a floating island in the swamps south of Moat Cailin. So Greywater Watch can't be found by outsiders or ravens. They don't know where it is because it moves.
Yeah,
it floats around.
It floats, right?
Yeah. And he was the one survivor apart from Ned of this thing.
Then we have Theo Wall, who's nicknamed Buckets, which is a pretty cool nickname, I feel like. It might not be Sword of the Morning or the White Bull.
Sort of depends where you get it from.
Hey, Buckets. He's from a northern mountain clan known as the Walls, and their sigil is 3 wooden buckets.
Ah, there you go. That's where he gets it from.
Yeah. No, so the Northern Mountain clans, there's about 40 Northern Mountain clans, and the Walls are the most powerful. They live in the mountains north of Winterfell, in the foothills along the shore of the Bay of Ice, which is kind of the northwestern part of the north. They shouldn't be confused with the Vale Mountain clans that we met in the Tyrion chapter when they were getting to the Vale of Arryn. They're more civilized than that. Obviously, they have a sigil. I mean, that's pretty civilized if you have a sigil. And Ned describes Theo as faithful. That's really the only description he gives of him.
Mm-hmm. Ethan Glover was Brandon Stark's squire. He was the only member of the party that rode to King's Landing with Brandon to survive.
Yeah. If
you remember, that's where Brandon was killed by Aerys.
And then we get Mark Ryswell, and there's really not a whole lot about him. He mentions that he's soft of speech and gentle of heart. And I couldn't even figure out what his relation to the primary Ryswell house is. So, okay. But then the final guy is Sir William Dustin. And one thing it mentions, the only thing that Ned mentions about Sir William Dustin is that he's on his Great Red Stallion. And so the reason for that is that his new bride was Barbary Ryswell. And the Ryswell house is known for their horse breeding. And this particular horse was the pride of Barbary's father's herd. And she gave it to him before he left. And he promised to her that he would return riding the stallion, which he's not going to be able to make good on. So,
did the stallion survive the fight?
Could
Ned take it home?
That is a very good question. I don't know.
I think so, at least based on the TV show it did, because all of the fighting was on foot, so all the horses.
Okay, all right. So Sir Oswald Went. He was one of the 3 members of the Royal Kingsguard that were in this fight in Ned's dream. And Sir Oswald is the younger brother of Walter Went, the Lord of Harrenhal.
Hey.
At the time. It is believed that the tourney at Harrenhal, which we refer to as the infamous tourney at Harrenhal, in 281, was sponsored in secret by Rhaegar Targaryen to gather lords to discuss his father Aerys' deteriorating mental state. It is also believed that Oswell was the go-between for Prince Rhaegar and Lord Walter Went for the planning of the tourney, as it was announced shortly after a visit from Oswell.
To King's Landing. Oh, no, back to Harrenhal.
Yes. Oswald visited his brother at Harrenhal. Shortly after he left, Lord Walter announced that there was going to be this tournament. Sources also suggest that Oswald, along with Sir Arthur Dayne, aided Rhaegar in kidnapping Lyanna Stark near Harrenhal and kicking off the events that led to Robert's rebellion. And here's a fun fact. Cat is a Went on her mother's side.
Oh.
Manisa.
There we go.
So it's not... I couldn't find a clear
family relationship
Oswell
to Oswell and
Manisa,
Cat,
but they're both Wents. So
yeah. So that is huge what you've just said. I had never heard this before. And what an amazing turn of events, because if you think about it, the tourney at Harrenhal, the infamous tourney at Harrenhal, was therefore put together to do something to the kingdom, to bring the kingdom together in a peace and harmony. And it ended up being the one thing that broke the kingdom apart.
Yeah, all because of some blue winter roses.
Winter roses, yes. But if Rhaegar could have just, kept his eye on the prize, he could have arranged for his father to be put out to sea, and we could have had a Rhaegar.
Yeah. Because people, just aside from Robert, people tend to hold Rhaegar in fairly high esteem. So he might have been a much better king.
Reference Sejora, who calls him the last dragon. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what I had in mind.
So, comparison with the television show, the interaction between Ned and the royals is very similar. The only real difference is that he actually wakes up to find them in his room. All of the stuff with Vane Poole and Alan are skipped. He's just there. He wakes up and the king and queen are by his bedside.
Oh, wow.
Everything else about it is mostly captured. Ned does not talk about Barra, which was pretty ballsy of book Ned anyway, if you ask me. So that didn't happen.
Indeed.
And also in the show, after Cersei leaves the scene, we get some pretty solid exposition when Ned demands of Robert that he do something about Jamie. Robert admits he can't because of his financial debts to the Lannisters.
Okay, see, I appreciate that. It makes sense why he keeps bending the knee to the Lannisters.
Right. Well, I mean, we know it from the book, but he's not saying it. And I think it was the right thing to do in the TV show at that moment, I think, to sort of like...
Because we don't know this in the TV show, right?
Well, Littlefinger said what he said, but you know what I mean. I mean, just beat people over the head with the story until they get it, and the other thing he says at that same moment is that he can't rule with the Starks and Lannisters at odds, so they just got to bury the hatchet. And that's the thing I gravitated to. I was like, he's right. You just can't. I mean, if he allows this to fester, or if he takes a side, he's going to break the kingdom apart, much as Rhaegar did with his blue roses. We don't see Ned's dream at all, if he has one. The scene just starts with him sort of like moaning in his bed and then waking up to see the king and queen. We do actually see the fight between Ned and the Kingsguard, but not until season 6 of the TV show. This is the scene we're on is episode 6 of season 1.
Right.
So the fight is delayed way into the future.
Sure.
So not to spoil, because I don't think we get any more details on the fight at the Tower of Joy, so I can give you what happened in the TV show, I think, without being a spoiler. A few things are different in the TV show. It's Ned +5 versus only 2 Kingsguard. We never hear who the other Kingsguard is. I think it must be Oswald Went, because of the 2, Arthur Dane, who is named, is clearly the senior partner. And if it was Gerald Hightower, the other one would be the senior partner, you'd imagine.
Right. That makes sense.
So I think it would be Oswald Went. Before the fight, Sir Arthur Dane nobly accepts his fate and says, "I wish you good fortune in the wars to come," to Ned.
Oh, okay.
Which, as a manly tear wiped from the eye.
Yeah.
And Arthur Dane would single-handedly have won the fight were it not for Howland Reed leaping up and stabbing him in the back, a little dishonourably.
Yes, that would be.
So I watch the TV show and read the books for the story. I don't really care about fight scenes, but this was really well done in the TV show. It was a terrific fight. I mean, just like thrillingly exciting and quick. I mean, the whole thing lasted like a minute and a half.
That's the key to fight scenes. They can't drag on.
Yeah. I always remember the fight scene at the end of The Fellowship of the Rings, the movie, where the orcs attack them and the Fellowship breaks up.
Yeah.
I remember watching that, and it took like 7 minutes of movie time. And I remember thinking, there are some big battles to come. If this is what they're doing with this little skirmish is taking 7 minutes. I'm like, that does not bode well for Helm's Deep et al.
Right.
But yeah, Arthur Dane. The only thing I didn't like about Arthur Dane's portrayal in the TV show is that he has 2 swords. And of course, one of the things we know about him is he is the wielder of Dawn, the great sword. But because he wields 2 swords, he is absolutely terrifying wielding these 2 swords. I mean, like, he looks like some oldie-timey General Grievous, you know.
Nice.
and in actual fact, when I was looking that up, I saw that someone had actually done that and actually replaced his swords with lightsabers, and he looked like General Grievous. Even my funnies are not novel. So pedantry corner. So we've already alluded to the pedantry here. It's a massive one. The 3 knights defending the Tower of Joy are all Kingsguard.
Yeah.
But the king is dead. The king that they swore the oath to is dead.
And not just him.
Not just him. His son, Prince Rhaegar, the king-elect, the next king, is also dead. The Queen, Rhaella, and young Prince Viserys are fled to Dragonstone. Rhaegar's wife, Elia, and their 2 children, Rhaenys and Aegon, are dead. The only person in the tower that we know of, I mean, presumably there's some servants, but is Ned's sister Lyanna. Why fight?
Yes. Exactly.
There's nothing to fight for here. There's nobody cares about Lyanna being kept captive anymore. Nobody in Westeros cares.
Right. Yet her brother has shown up to bring her home.
Right.
Just let him.
Exactly. It just makes no sense. Let it go.
This can be avoided.
And I think you're the one who mentioned this. It's like they seem like blood riders. We talked about this for Khal Drogo. They are now avenging their lord's death, or trying to, before they follow him to the grave.
And even exactly. So okay, say they're blood riders and they're avenging the death of either Aerys or Rhaegar. Take your pick. What good is it still guarding Lyanna? They should have left the tower ages ago.
Well, true. But I guess you could say fighting and killing Ned Stark was job number one on the getting revenge.
Right. But they shouldn't have been at the Tower of Joy because they should have been off seeking revenge.
Right. Yeah. And it's a shame, I think, because this is rightly a storied battle from this period. And it just feels like the underpinning of it is just a little bit thin. It just doesn't seem to make an awful lot of sense. But I like your idea. I like your idea that Rhaegar had them swear a new vow to protect Lyanna.
Possibly. But, just an idea.
But still, at the end of the day, he died. And you can't keep her there forever. What are you keeping her there for? If you win this fight, you're going to die of old age.
Yeah. I know they take their vows very seriously. I mean, they stood by Aerys through all his reign of terror without judgment.
Yeah.
But that vow has to be broken when the line of procession dies. And even taking that a step further, when Ned says Sir Willem has taken the remaining members of the royal family and gone to Dragonstone, and they say that's really great of him, but he's not a member of the Kingsguard. We don't flee. They're not fleeing as long as they're with the royal family.
Right. I mean, literally, by succession, Viserys is king of Westeros.
Right.
As the King's Guard, they should be on Dragonstone, protecting him.
Exactly. Exactly. But they seem like honorable men, so why fight to the death to keep a woman captive in a castle for no apparent reason?
Yeah.
But if any listeners have a good reason, let us know. Yeah. Let us know what you think.
I like yours, but it still falls down because the person you swore to died. Yes. If I say to Rhaegar, on top of my Kingsguard vow, I vowed to protect Lyanna Stark from being recaptured, but then Rhaegar's killed.
Now you go back to the first vow, which is protect the king, which is now Viserys Targaryen. All right, I guess we better wrap this up.
Yes, please, yeah. So, bad blood between Lannisters and Starks, it's not going anywhere. And Robert sweeping things under the carpet is not exactly going to help. I mean, I don't see what else he can do, but it's not going to help.
Yeah, and we just keep getting more and more reasons why Robert's not really meant for the throne. Could be a great general, like I said. He's just not the man for the job of a king.
Yeah, you asked if the slap to the face to Cersei is going to make things worse between them. I don't see how it can, really.
That's a good
it's as bad as it can get. Cersei's good at twisting stories, although, as we've said, not as good as she could have been. There were better stories here.
Oof, you pointed it out as a rather weak job there. She had way more time to come up with some really good stuff. Littlefinger is still not convincing me that he's all in for Team Stark. And I do like you said, the real deal is he's intentionally written not to for us not to be able to figure him out exactly. But he certainly could have put in a little more information about what exactly happened that day had he wanted to.
I think what is clear is Littlefinger is Team Littlefinger.
Yes, that is
100%.
I've heard multiple people so far in this book say Littlefinger is looking out for Littlefinger, so that's definitely true.
And Arya, she's got to vent her anger in positive ways. I don't know if this is coming up in the book, so this might be a bit of a spoiler. But in the TV show, the sort of very next scene after this was her having another fighting lesson with Syrio Forel. And Forel, I always say Forel. Sorry, Syrio Forel. And she's upset because of Ned's injury, but Syrio is like, it's not the day you're dancing through the meadows that trouble comes.
Right.
You've got to be ready to fight.
All
right. Thanks for listening, everybody. As always, you can reach us at ghosts.harrenhall@gmail.com and follow us at Twitter on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal, Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube.
And if you wouldn't mind going out and leaving us a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or podchaser.com, that really does go a long way in helping us out. We'd really appreciate it if you wouldn't mind doing that.
Yeah. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.